Henry J. Jackson, who is better known as Tiny, is being interviewed by Kenneth and June Hunter in Albany, New York at 3:30 in the afternoon. Tiny served in the United States Army from December 1942 until February 1967. Now, Tiny, please tell us your name and when and where you were born.
My name is Henry J. Jackson, better known as Tiny, and I was born in Schuylerville, New York on March the 25th, 1918.
And what did you do before you went into the service?
I was employed by General Electric Company. Off and on. The last job I had with them, I was a machinist helper, and I was going to take over on the boring mill, run the boring mill that I was a helper on. But I got a notice, report for a draft for induction in the Army. When the company heard about it, they immediately wrote a letter asking for deferment. And when I checked with the draft board, the day that I had to come to Albany, I asked about that deferment. They said, yes, we got the deferment, but we also got your draft notice, so you go ahead to Albany. And, well, I come to Albany for a physical. In the meantime, I have been classified as 4F, unserviceable, because of my height. Army regulations state that you're supposed to be 5 foot, but you can't be over 6'6". And at that time, I was measured at 6'8", 2 inches over to the height limit.
So they gave you a deferment so you could go into the Army then?
No,
They canceled.
No, what happened, well, here in Albany, I was taking a physical. 2 doctors, one was a civilian doctor, the other was a major in the medical corps. They were trying to guess my height. They take me out of the line, physical line where I was standing, take me over to the scales, put me on the scales, and when they raised that bar up, the shaft come right out of the holder. And when they put it on my head, it appeared to be about 2 inches short of getting back into the shaft. And that only measured up to 6'6". So they figured I must be 6'8". So at least that. So I get back, in the meantime, they had bet a dinner on it. And I told the major, the civilian doctor says, oh, he's 6'4". Major says, no, he's taller than that. They bet a dinner on it. I told the major to take that bet. So the major won the bet. I get back in line, and about a half hour later, when I get up to the scales, they got a young PFC, Army PFC, on the scales handling this. He gets on he puts the bar on my head. He couldn't get it up there somehow. He got it up there. Then he started pulling down until he got it down to 6'6". And I come in the Army at 6'6", officially. So I lost 2 inches in height in 10 minutes. And the meantime, when I did get in, they sent me to Camp Upton, New York. That's somewhere in the Peekskill area. All they had for me was shoes and dungarees. And they had a special requisition all my clothes, shirt, trousers, jackets, everything. And I laid around there in Camp Upton for 2 or 3 weeks until they got all my clothes together, and I finally shipped out. I ended up at Camp Davis, North Carolina, where I took my basic training. It happened to be an old Coast Artillery camp or post, and I ended up going from there, went to Camp Stewart, Georgia, in the 40 millimeter anti-aircraft outfit. I was a squad leader in the acting squad leader. And when we got there, and during basic training at Camp Davis, I used to be a chow hound. I always stood close to the door, knowing when it's meal time, when the platoon sergeant blew the whistle to fall out for chow. I was always the first one, head of the line. And it got so bad that one time he even marched us beyond the mess hall, gave us to the rear march, just so I'd be the last one into the mess hall. And well, one time when they're marching me, the platoon sergeant gave the command to column right, and I executed the movement without any doubt, you know. And after the meal was over and we were back in the barracks, he called me in the sergeant's room there, and he says, have you had previous military training? I said, yes. I had 3 years in National Guard while I was in high school. Well, high school, 1937 to 1939. I got out just before the 27th Division was federalized. I was with the 27th Division at that time. And well, during Camp Davis, I was naturally I was promoted, told to act as squad leader in the barracks, and all formations, I was the squad leader, temporary squad leader. We shipped out to Camp Davis. I ended up down to Camp Fort Stewart, Georgia. And in a 40 millimeter anti-aircraft battalion. And at that time, I don't know why they were still forming these anti-aircraft units, because there was no, they were more or less coast defense, and Well, it didn't seem like it'd be any necessary for him. That's my opinion. And Camp Davis, North Carolina, we went on maneuvers every once in a while. We drilled constantly, and went out on field exercises, and let's see, from Stewart, North Carolina,
So what kind of work did you do there, do you remember? You said you worked with anti-aircraft?
well, I was the squad leader.
How many men did you have under you as a squad leader?
It was seven of them, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And then,
What was the barracks like?
Barracks were long, like this room, double row of bunks on this side and that. And there, in the Army, you always slept head to toe. In other words, one person would be sleeping with their head against the wall, the other person would be sleeping with their head heading out in the aisle, see. In other words, your feet are just opposite. One, every
So-
other person is up against the wall, and the other persons are with their head out towards the aisles.
so in your case, you were so tall, did you get two bunks?
Oh, I always try to manage to get with my head against the wall. And I'd have to put the pillow up on the iron railing in the back of the bed and up against the wall, just so I'd fit in the bed.
Yeah. And being so tall, I suppose you stood out everywhere you went in the formation?
Yes, I did.
And everything.
I was first, usually in the first squad of the first platoon.
Uh-huh. And I suppose that's why you were first for the mess hall. You had a lot more height to fill.
Right.
Then you said that you were also in like a military policeman.
You had military police duty?
No, not at that time.
Oh,
Okay. What was the routine like in the barracks? Did everybody have assigned duties? Lots of inspections?
Yes, well, you have to sweep the floor, clean up. Of course, everyone was responsible for their area, the bed, the foot locker, immediate around the area. Then there's whoever was detailed as barracks orderly would sweep the main floor. You'd sweep out towards the middle, and he would sweep down the main.
Did you pull any?
Rotated. And the men, the first sergeant would always post a roster for duties. You had the kitchen police, KP, where you go in the kitchen, you work in the kitchen. You also had, well, I don't mean, we didn't have guard duty at that time, but any other duties there was, I'd have to pick, if I was, my squad was told to furnish a detail, I'd have to pick a couple of men to go and do that detail, whatever it was.
Now, did you have to do any KP duty yourself, or were you exempt from that?
I believe I pulled KP one time. And that's before the sergeant recognized, noticed that I had some training. After that, I was acting squad leader, so I didn't have to do any KP.
That's a lucky break.
What was a typical day like as a recruit going through basic training?
Basic training was the fact that you did everything they told you to do. And it wasn't bad. Some people think it was a little rough, but after all, they're trying to make men out of us. And
After the basic training, what happened from there? What was your first major assignment after basic training?
Down North Carolina.
got assigned to the 841st AAA Battalion. It was a 40 millimeter anti-aircraft outfit.
And what did you went somewhere after that too? You've been to...
Camp Buckner, North Carolina.
Okay.
From Camp Stewart, we went up to Camp Buckner, North Carolina, and we'd go out of the maneuvers and dig a foxhole. And during the night, we'd move during the night, and we'd get in a position, we'd have to dig a pit for the 40 millimeter gun that's set in, and another pit for the 50 caliber machine gun, which would be stationed to protect the area. All that was done at night, and get a little rest during the daytime, and then of course you're moving around, having activities going on. Then you may be a day or two there and told, okay, you're going to move again. We said our outfit dug more holes in North Carolina and Georgia and covered them up than anything else.
And was it hot when you were there?
Very hot.
How did the people treat you down there, the civilians, when you had time off from duty? In South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, when I'd go in on a weekend, I was chumming around with a sergeant that come out of Texas, Leo Mullins, and the two of us, he was fairly tall and slender built like me, and we made a nice pair walking down the street, you know. And well, we never got any backlash from the color down there. They didn't like us, of course, especially in my case. Whenever we'd meet anybody and we'd get talking, they'd ask, where you're from, Leo would tell them, I'm from so-and-so in Texas, you know. They'd ask me where I'm from. I said, I'm from New York State. Oh, well, I get more or less a cold shoulder, you know.
get slightly ignored due to conversation with Leo. But outside of that, I didn't find too much racial discrimination. It's just the old Southern not hospitality.
Yeah, charm or whatever.
Right.
Now, do they prepare you for transport from there to go to an overseas assignment?
Yes, at one time we got an alert. Finally they broke up our outfit and sent us for infantry training. 6 weeks of infantry training. Then we're ready for overseas assignments. And finally our group was hit. This was during the Battle of the Bulge. And we had people from our squad, not our squad, but the platoon I was with, get sent over. They got in the Battle of the Bulge. They got right in the combat zone, and they were back in the States as a wounded veteran. I was alerted to go overseas. During the last physical, they determined that they thought I had sugar diabetes. So I was deferred and taken off the shipment list and sent back to training, infantry training again. When I got there, they didn't know what to do with me because I'd already had the training. So they put me in charge of a barracks. There was another fellow there that had just come back from overseas. And he was wounded a bit. And he and I sort of didn't have anything to do. We just cleaned the barracks, made sure that the barracks was cleaned and neat, beds all made properly and all. And then we laid around more or less.
So you didn't get to get into combat during World War II?
No, I always kept missing it. When finally I got alerted for overseas, I was sent to North Africa. After traveling all over Casablanca and Egypt, and I ended up in Oran, North Africa. As we got off the plane there, a colonel, a provost marshal, in other words, he's like the chief of police, was standing there waiting watching us come down off the ramp with the plane, and he was picking people out of he picked me and pulled me out. He says, "Get over here." So the fellas that he pulled out of line there, he took us with him, gave us we were going to be military policemen. I was issued a .45 pistol, and holster and everything else, a belt, and we were paired up within somebody that had been around for a while. So and to teach us the ropes, what to do and how to do it. Primary duties were, when we were in town, town patrol or anything like that, was to keep the fellas out of the bars and the houses of ill repute. And of course, we'd be patrolling the sidewalks, and if we see a soldier out of uniform, we'd correct him. If we run into him again and he's still out of uniform, we'd send him back to his unit. And,
Did you have a lot of men not doing the right thing when they were on leave?
no,
No.
not,
They acted quite well then. Good.
not too much, no.
Did you get news of how the war was progressing? Did they keep you up to date? How our forces were doing?
No, I don't remember.
After your duty there in Africa, did you come back to the States? Or did you go to another post?
No, we would, let's see, what did I do?
See, did you, I know you say you went to Korea,
Oh, yes, that was later on, though.
and then you
You
had,
must have come back to the States
Yes, I
first.
come back to the States and, just trying to think where,
did you go to Greenland, or that was later too?
no, that's probably,
Yeah. Well, I noticed you went to Egypt. You mentioned this a little earlier. And you got to see the
Oh.
Nile River and,
yeah. Well, what it was, before we ended up in Oran, or North Africa. When we left the States, we landed in Casablanca, and we moved we were in Egypt for a while. Got to see the pyramids and the Sphinx, the Nile River. And I wasn't very interested in sightseeing at that time.
were they huge, great big, those pyramids? Are they really big?
Hmm?
Are those pyramids really big?
Oh yes, they're
Unbelievable.
enormous. I'd say the base, about the square, like this room here.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh, yeah. Big.
and then go up four-sided like. And,
Mm-hmm.
While you were over there, did you get to ride a camel at all?
yes, I did.
What was that like?
You get seasick on them.
Good thing you didn't go in the Navy.
Yeah.
I guess they,
Oh, but the camel does have a tendency to give you that feeling of, I don't know how to explain it.
that must be why they're called the ships of the desert. Camels, because you go up and down as you
Yeah.
ride. I guess it's fun getting on them. They kneel and raise you up and you feel like you're going backwards.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, it's good you did all that when you had the chance.
All right, now, after the duty there, did you know that how the war was progressing? Did the war end over?
Yes, the war had moved out of Iran, gone up North Africa. I don't know where they went.
Probably to Italy.
Probably, but we didn't. We stayed in Iran. Our MP detachment was designated to stay there until all the troops are out of there. I come back to the States and
You come back on a ship or
No.
by plane?
let's see. No, by ship, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, can you remember what the mood was like when you got back to the States? How were did the people greet you?
When I got home, I got leave after I got home. They gave me a 10-day leave. And, well, the people back home were glad to see me, and they treated me very well. In fact, this one bar that I used to patronize, I'd go in there and if I'd had 3 drinks, I'd pay for 1, and the bartender would give me 2, the other 2 on.
Mm-hmm.
Now from there, you must have had a tour of duty in the United States, because
I
then
went to Germany.
you went off to Germany. What was that like in Germany?
Very good. My first time was in Stuttgart, Germany. Again was the 4th Army headquarters. No, not 4th Army. 8th Army was over in Japan, in Korea rather.
What was duty like in Germany?
Road patrols with the jeeps, and
Was there a lot of devastation from the war that you saw over there in
yes,
Germany?
there was quite a bit. But by that time, things had been pretty well cleaned up, and the German people are very quick on building things up. One thing I noticed over in Germany was their forest. You can't find anything on the ground there in the forest. What I mean, it looks like somebody had gone through there with a vacuum cleaner.
Wow.
That's how clean the forests are.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see where.
So then after Germany,
After Germany, was there a rotation back to the States from Germany?
Yeah,
and then did you go to Korea after that?
yes, I went to Korea in let's see, 1960, I believe it was. Yes, 60 to 61.
And Did you do intelligence work there?
Yes, I was in 8th Army headquarters there.
And do you remember what you had to do in that job?
Well, it's a lot of map reading and planning on future in case in case of trouble. Plans. They were drafted all type of plans for everything, you know.
What was the weather like in Korea?
Bitter cold. It's the coldest I've ever been.
Did you have to have special clothing?
No, we did the regular clothes. Funny
Because-
part about it, one time down in Camp Stewart, Georgia, must have been during the winter months. They had a snowstorm, and it wasn't much. It snowed a little bit. People were dancing in the street because they had never, majority of the people had never seen snow. And it got so cold that I went to bed that night, and I had 2 blankets and a comforter, and I threw my overcoat on top of me because we're sleeping in tents. And that's how cold it was. We had a pot-belly stove in there. You had to bank the stove at night, you know, and it got real cold.
And what kind of food did you have to eat in Korea?
Well, we had, the Army fed you good. You wouldn't dare eat on the outside.
Right.
They told you not to eat, to try to eat the German,
Korean.
Korean food, you know. Kimchi is what they have. They take in the vegetables and apples and a lot of different stuff and bury it. I don't know what kind of protection it had, but they put it in the ground for 6 months or so it ferments, you know, and that's one of their main staples. The Korean people that work for the U.S. government are forbidden to eat kimchi during the week, the whole week while they're working. They can't come to work with kimchi on their breath, you know.
It really smelled badly.
Oh,
And with this, would they bury it in a cover in the dirt on the ground, or did they eat the dirt too?
yeah, they have a system of covering it.
I guess it was protected so it fermented.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Now, on holidays, did you have the standard kind of food like turkey and ham and so forth, like we did, like we were accustomed to here in the States?
oh, yeah, it's, on the holidays we'd get a big, I don't know, let's see, I don't know what months I was over there.
Did you ever get to see any USO entertainment?
Very seldom. For one thing, in order to go to them, you're out sitting out on the ground. Usually it's in a, you know, a bowl like, where you got the hills.
Yeah.
And you'd sit on the hills looking down on the show. the officers, of course, had the,
The choice of seats.
yeah, all around the bottom of this,
Like an amphitheater.
yeah.
Now, you did get back to the States from Korea, and I understand you had a tour of duty at West Point?
No,
No?
no,
Yeah, you mentioned you knew a West Point officer who was so eyes well dressed.
one of them, of all the officers, there's quite a few that were outstanding, but this one hit my mind. So every time I saw that person, I think he was a first lieutenant at the time. He was impeccably perfect. You couldn't see a wrinkle on him. And all day long, it would be the same way, you know. I don't know, whenever I saw him during the day or evening, he always looked the same, as if he'd just come out of the shower and just got freshly dressed, you know.
Shoes
He was
shone.
that type of person that could wear clothes, and he really showed it.
And now you'd mentioned you went up to Greenland
Oh, I was
when you were in Fort Totten.
stationed at Fort Totten, the RADCOM headquarters there for that district. And I was working in the G2 section, intelligence section, and the colonel in charge of the section was kind of sick, and he was getting ready to, he was retiring, and there was an inspection trip to Thule, Greenland. We've got troops up there in the Air Defense Command, and New York City, headquarters in New York, at Fort Totten, inspects them. We also had inspection trips in New Jersey and Massachusetts. But Thule, Greenland was I believe, 6-day trip. We went up in June, and that's the time when Thule is 6 months of light and 6 months of darkness. And up there in Thule, Greenland, of course, the gun batteries were scattered around, and if you went from one section to another, you signed out at one, and when you get to the destination you're going, you tell them where you're going, and when you get to the destination, that destination tells your originate spot
That you have arrived.
you arrived. Because if you get straight off the beaten path, you could get lost out there and freeze out there, become an icicle.
Now that was cold in June as well, when you were there?
Well, we were in winter clothes, of course, but in the evening, during the daytime, a wool shirt, the Army regulation, was warm enough to usually. And the funny thing was, they had markers, ropes strung, for instance, from the barracks to the mess hall, and from the
barracks also to headquarters during what they call a whiteout. That's when the north wind blows across the ice caps and picks up all particles of ice and the snow, and what I mean, it blows, you can't see anything. And if you're out in the cold there, if you have to go, for instance, from the barracks to the latrine, as you go out the door, you grab a hold of the latrine rope and you hold on to it and walk to the latrine, get you there. If you drop the rope and happen to wander off, God only knows what's going to happen to you during that whiteout. In the first place, you don't want to get out in the weather during it, but if you're forced to, you have to be sure that you grab the safety ropes.
I bet that bitter cold hit your face, the icy snow and all. It would have been cold. So then you went back to New York State, down to Fort Totten, after you were just in Greenland for a short time.
Oh, then I got sent back I went back to Germany again. This time I was around Würzburg area. I was with an intelligence outfit there. And when I come back from that tour duty, 3 years, I was assigned to Fort Holabird, Maryland, the Army Intelligence School, where I was an assistant instructor, supply sergeant for the school, and assistant instructor. My duties were primarily to run the equipment. If we have any showing any film or anything, I'd be running the projector or the view graph. If they had to, I'd have to put the stuff on a view graph and change it as the instructor goes along. I have a copy of his lecture, and I follow him and know exactly when to change the view graph, put a different one on.
So would that be like an overhead projector? The view graph? Describe the view graph, because the people today don't know what a view graph might be.
Yeah.
Can you just...
It's a machine where you, it's got a box with a glass covering with a light under there, and you put a picture on and it's projected onto a screen. And of course, there's control to enlarge it or make it clear.
And then a whole room of people can see your picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this instruction, was this strictly for officers, or was this for officers and enlisted people?
No, it was officers and enlisted people.
Now I know another thing, you lost your hearing somewhat in the service. I know you mentioned that was one
what?
thing that,
You
your
lost
hearing.
you lost your hearing in the service?
Yes, I did.
Was that the result of being with the heavy weapons units?
I don't know what it caused it. At one time there, in the 40 millimeter outfit, when we'd go out on the range, they'd have to go out to shoot at the targets, have an airplane flying by, towing a big target, and the anti-aircraft guns would fire at it and try to hit that target, see. And usually our outfit was right next to the big, big cannons there. And when they were fired and all, man, it'd shake the ground. I
And
don't know if that was the cause of it or the weapons or whatever.
And they didn't provide ear protection back then, did
Right.
they? No.
How much time did you put in the Army altogether?
25 years.
And when, would you do it all over again if you had the opportunity? Or
Yes.
You had good training? Now, when you got out of the Army, where did you leave the Army from?
My wife, my first wife, who had married in 46, she'd gone through the Army with me, and I got discharged out of, one time, the last time I come back from Germany, I didn't come back from Germany. What it was, I had gone to Germany. I had over 20 years in already. And I'd gone to Germany. I figured it'd be the last trip. And I got over there. I was there about 10 months when all of a sudden I was pulled back to the States and shipped up to Fort Lewis, Fort Lewis, Washington. No, see, just outside of Seattle there.
Okay.
And what it was, they're preparing, they opened up part of the camp that had been closed up. And because this was going to be a processing station for troops going to Vietnam. And we got there and barracks, we had to, first of all, we had to work on clean up the place, get everything all set. When we finally got organized enough to start processing troops, well, I had to check their records to see the clearance, if they had any clearances, and answer any questions they had on the security and classified material and all. So,
And you were released, and well, I know we're coming near the end of the interview, and we'd like to mention an organization that you helped found.
Okay, you were the founding father of Chapter 120 here in Schenectady, New York, the Retired Enlisted Association. Do you remember setting it up?
yes, I do. It was a funny thing, how I joined TREA, I don't know. but I was getting their magazine, and one day while reading the magazine, I says, "What the heck is this? The Retired Enlisted Association." I said, "Yeah," I says, "I remember something about joining this." I said, "But here I belong to an organization, but I've never gone to a meeting or anything." I said, "Why the heck?" I says, "Where can I go to a meeting?" You know, I start going through the publication that come out. Voice is the name of it, and the nearest chapter was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, who's going to go to Pittsburgh to go to a meeting? So, well, going through the magazine, there was a section in there, build your own chapter. So it says, get a group of 20, 25 retired people in your area and get a place to have a meeting, and then notify the TREA headquarters, which was in Colorado. And they would tell you what to do. So I said, where the heck am I going to find 25, 30 retired people, you know? Then I got the idea, go to the retirement section over the WWII Arsenal. I got in to see this colonel in charge of the section, and I explained my problem, what I was trying to do, and he said, "Sure." He said, "Just a minute." And he could call and talk to somebody in a printing room or somewhere, and while talking to the colonel, in about 10, 15 minutes, the fella comes out and hands the colonel a bunch of papers, you know. There must have been 4 or 5 sheets. He looks at them and he hands them to me. He says, "Here," and there's a list of names. Must have been anywhere from 200-300 names on there. How am I going to contact all these people? You know. So I think I called the headquarters in Colorado, and they told me to go ahead, send a list of names to them with the zip code of an area.
And they send out the informational material for you.
Yeah, well, they sent a notice out to all the people on the list that Henry Jackson is forming a Retired Enlisted Association outfit and is looking for members, you know.
And then if you can,
And, well, I got the 25, 30 people, and I had a place to meet. WWII Arsenal was our first meeting place. And
that's how TREA began.
they send a fella down to give us a brief outline of what's going on and how we go about. So we had to form elect officers, and they
you
elected me
as the first president.
the first time.
Yeah, well, we're running out of time, and we've appreciated the effort you put into forming TREA since we're members. And I want to thank you for your service to the United States. It's been wonderful to meet you. Thank you.